Hey y'all, sorry about that. We're gonna get everybody back on now, hopefully. I'm sending Dion an invite. All
Okay.
right.
Working? All right, cool. Sorry about that.
No, it's totally fine. It's not the first fireside chat we've had where we've had technical difficulties, so
Yeah, all
it
right.
does happen. Um, yeah, we had to start the call over again, so I'm just waiting for Sifung to hop back on.
Okay.
Mm.
Thanks for all you're doing with this. I know it's not easy.
No, no, it's all good. Yeah. Yeah, we've been having better luck recently where we haven't had too many issues, but like I remember our second one, we had to start the call over again like halfway through and it
Yeah.
was just a mess.
Yeah, happens.
Yeah.
I'm always like, we can send cars to space, but Wi-Fi, for whatever reason, like,
Right. Yeah. Why haven't we improved on Wi-Fi? Good question. Huh. Um,
he's back.
yeah, I'm trying to add them back. It's not letting them join. Hey, Sufeng, I am trying to let you join. I'm sending you an invite. Um, is there any way that you can accept the invite to your phone? Because it's not letting me like accept yours for whatever reason. Uh, yeah, it keeps saying unable to join. Damn, this is the same problem that we had with you, Dion. That's why we had to start the call over. It would send me your requests.
Here we go. He's on now. They're on now.
Woo!
Finally.
All right. Good
Yeah.
job, team.
I don't know what's going on with Instagram Live, but it's not letting me accept. When you guys request to join, it wouldn't let me accept.
Huh.
It would only let me like send y'all an invite and then let you join when you accept it. I don't know why.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we can check with is whether we have the most updated version of the Instagram.
It might be
Yeah, because
it.
mine kind of there's some sort of problems and bugs when I try to update the Instagram.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it is somehow related to whether we have all the same updated version
Yeah.
of it. But we can make sure we can do it next time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's weird. But thanks for dealing with all that bullshit, guys. But Dion, go ahead and go let us know what you were talking about
Yeah.
again about how you got into bodybuilding and lifting. We'd love to hear that
For sure.
story.
Yeah. So I've been a lifelong athlete. Played basketball basically my entire life. And I played club basketball for a while in Cleveland, and my coach at the time had us out at this massive facility. And, I kind of like learned about, fitness and training and whatnot through like preseason stuff for basketball. And I'd always been interested in it, loved the physical challenge and that aspect of it. And so after practice, my coach came up and said, "Hey, like you got to talk to this person." And I was like, "Who is that?" Walk over. This guy was huge. He was probably the biggest guy I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, "How do I do that?" Like, I want to know more about that. And that just stuck with me, and it sort of fueled my passion to like learn more, you know, develop a deeper understanding of bodybuilding. So I would just say, like, from the time my jaw was on the floor and I saw this guy to the time I actually began to understand more about fitness, it has just been like, I don't know, like a labor of love type of thing where it's really challenging, but it's also really interesting. And so I'm willing to go through the challenging parts of it because I'm so interested in it and passionate about it. And then just turned out that I was actually really good at it. So it started off in an unexpected way by meeting a random person on on a random day. And yeah, it just like shaped the way that I thought about bodybuilding.
Yeah,
So
that's
how,
actually what happened to me
Oh
too.
yeah,
Sorry, I saw a giant guy who was a coworker of mine, and he was an
yeah,
ex-Marine, and he was into bodybuilding, and I was like, he was the most muscular person I'd ever seen in person, and I was like, how do I look like that? You know?
yeah. You get it exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
So I
and I
feel
think
you.
we all get that. We all have that person, right? So
yeah.
I think my person was actually my first coach,
Mhm.
right? I randomly met him at the gym, like after I quit my dragon boating, and it's like I'm done with team sports.
Yeah,
I want to try something different, and then I just hang out at the gym, just training. I don't know what I train at all,
yeah,
nothing, just go to the gym, wandering and feel the machine so that I feel like I was training. And then I met this person and like, wow, this guy is huge, right?
yeah.
So, how can I get like that? I mean, I think so. It's exactly that kind of, we have all these person, whether it's on the newspaper, whether it's a real person, right? So we met them, and that, they just have some footprints and, in our life,
Yeah,
right? Make us realize that we love lifting and bodybuilding.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did your like journey with sport in general, maybe like not with lifting, I don't know, but because you did basketball before you
Mhm.
got into lifting.
Hmm.
But how did your journey with sport and with like bodybuilding and everything coincide with kind of your journey as a trans person, right? Like, was there any influence between the two? Like, could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I don't think there's really any influence between the two. I think
Okay.
they sort of have like I'm trying to think. It feels like so long ago. um, I think it just like transitioning and coming out and that happened later in my life, and so a lot of my life I spent training in a body I didn't feel comfortable with, which I know a lot of folks can relate to.
Hmm.
Um, and I just was trying to find my footing, and I felt like I would make progress in certain areas as an athlete, and then you know certain things, parts of being assigned female at birth would happen and just like set me back um, in ways I just didn't like, and I felt like I couldn't make enough progress in the body that I had, and so. Um, I was still pretty strong, and I just kind of stood out in a lot of groups, and which I've learned to like accept. And I post transition, it just opened up a whole different world for me, and I feel like being able to do something that you love and are passionate about, and are now comfortable doing, like that
Hmm.
changed everything for me. And I think transitioning was the best thing that I could have done for myself, physically, mentally, psychologically. But I think it also allowed me to be proud of who I am and who I was becoming, and to see the sort of like shape shifting going on. And candidly, that's why I decided to compete, was because I was finally proud and comfortable with who I was. And I just wanted to have this like tremendous expression of self, and that was like the best way I could do it. And I think I told myself at one point, like, if I'm in this body, my former body, like I'm never going to compete in bodybuilding. There's no way I would like walk out in bikini. But
Yeah.
like post transition, I'm like, absolutely, let's give this our full attention and 110%. Let's just see what happens. And yeah, does that answer the question? I know I kind of went on a tangent
No,
there.
it does. It actually kind of answered the next question we had, which is just like what got you into competing
Yeah,
in general. But
yeah. I
I
mean,
want to give Siafung a turn to ask a question next.
No, it's more like a follow up. Like,
yeah.
so I hope I didn't miss it right just now when you say, you kind of transition from, playing basketball to, starting to lift,
Hmm.
right? So what makes you change from, team doing a team sport, right, to something more individual? Because,
Yeah.
that kind of that your experience in sports is kind of like overlap with like my experience.
Hmm.
Like, of course, I'm not doing basketball, right? But I've spent a lot of time like doing team sports and individual sports. I start with individual sports first. I start with marathon running. And then, I mean, I love that, we also do team sports, right? Cross country running as a team, but mostly you run on your own, right? And then I
Right.
started to do like rowing and dragon boating, which are like obviously team sports, right? And then I realized that, well, in the girls' team, there's just too much gossip that I don't want to get involved in,
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm done with that. I want to do something on my own so that I can just train myself and get myself better,
Hmm.
right? And so then, bodybuilding kind of finds me, right? The way, random, encounter at the gym, that allows me to do that sport. So what actually makes you like transition from doing a team sport to something more individual?
Mhm. If you lose enough games, no, I'm just kidding. Like I love to win. Like I've always loved to win, and I feel like at one point I was playing basketball. I played at the D2 level in college, and that was sort of an inflection point for me because, candidly, the environment that I was in was not conducive to me being my best self. It was a very racially charged environment. There was a lot of just bad stuff going on, and I left the team after 2 years, and just went full into lifting. It's just kind of all I had. I didn't have a backup plan or like a backup team sport I wanted to get into, but what I learned through that experience was like I could rely on myself, and I liked how, and there was nobody else I could hold accountable. If I didn't do it in an individual sport, that was on me, like period. And I think I needed to make that shift mentally to really push myself into the next challenge. And so I took that opportunity after basketball to do that and to say, okay, if I'm the only person on this team, what can I do? How am I as an individual athlete? And it wasn't really more than that. It was mostly the stoppage of basketball and the exploration of fitness and looking for that same sort of like, adrenaline rush and physical challenge, but away from kind of all the noise and kind of BS that I had just been through. So.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid reason, right?
Yeah.
We all want to win in some ways, right? So especially if we are already athletes ourselves, right? We want to, we just don't, I mean, of course we love we love participating, right? But a lot of times winning is the key, right? That moves us and motivates us to move forward, right? And I think there's a lot of uncertainty too, right? When you switch from one sport to another, right? Yeah. So of course, like it's a new opportunity, but at the same time, it's also really uncertain because you know nothing about this new sport and then you don't know how to deal with it. You don't know how the competition looks like, right? Those kind of stuff. So I'm very curious about, that relates to our next question is that how did you actually find IATBP and what makes you think that, okay, maybe I can give this a try?
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty sure I just like Googled like trans bodybuilding and I saw the documentary that everybody has seen and all that. And I just started exploring it. I really think I just Googled it and it like came up.
Yeah.
And
we're the first result that shows up on Google. We're like half the page.
Which is great. I'm like, this is easy. And then I think my coach at the time mentioned it as well. And like, I had gone to him and said, I want to compete in this thing in October. It was about maybe a year and a half out. And I'm glad I found it because it was exactly what I needed. It was that ultimate form of expression that I was looking for. And so.
Oh. Still, you haven't completely answered my question. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm so sorry. How can I better answer your question?
No, I'm kidding. Like, I mean, yes, like, right, switching from, doing a team sport and then doing individual sport and then doing bodybuilding itself, right, or lifting in general, right? Lifting in general is kind of different from bodybuilding, right? Bodybuilding, you have to come to display the physique that you have been feeling for a very long time, dysphoric or uncomfortable about about that. And and of course we all as competitors, as athletes, we want to compete, right? We want to join that, I mean, adrenaline probably in competing, right? But it's also for me at least, there's a lot of setbacks at the beginning, right? When I decided to, or struggling, whether I should really come to a competition, right? Whatever I wear, whatever I pose, whatever category I'm in, but like, okay, this idea of competing, right? Displaying the body that, I have been feeling a lot of times uncomfortable with, like I think even a lot of times for a lot of us, even you post-transition, there's still body parts that you think, we want to all look better, right? And competing, especially as a bodybuilder, you have to really, we just wear our, the posing trunk, right? So basically you wear almost nothing. You wear even less than, when you go to the beach, right?
Yeah.
So what is that thing, or what is that motivates you, right? To actually, to step on stage, right? And compete as a bodybuilder. in the competition?
Yeah. So my answer to that question is this. I finally felt comfortable in my own skin and like I had done the work. And I wanted to just show that to other people. I wanted to say, if I can do this, like you can obviously do it too. Like if you are feeling uncomfortable in your body and there's steps you need to take to get comfortable, that's possible. I just wanted to be an example of what was possible and like what could be done with full attention, you know, finding your way through the uncomfortable parts, becoming comfortable in your own skin and putting that on display, and just the joy and challenge obviously that comes with that. But it really was about becoming a fuller expression of myself after being in the body that I was already comfortable with. I loved what was happening in the changes that I saw in my physique. And that was new. That was brand new for me. I had not ever really felt proud or owned that. And to lean into that and say, okay, I like this. I like how I feel. I like how I look now. Oh, I like how I look now. I like how I look now. Like that was just something that I could not get enough of. And I was like, okay, keep going, keep going, keep going. You can do this. Get out there and be proud. And it's okay. It took a while for me to feel comfortable being proud enough to get on stage in a way that was about expression and not about pride. It became about a demonstration of expression of full selfhood instead of like, I'm so proud of who I am. It's more of like, I'm like a spiritual person. Inside of me, there's this desire to just be expressive and express myself in full capacity. And that just kept growing. And so I think the competitive element of bodybuilding and being on stage and all those things that sort of make up bodybuilding as we know it, it was just the final kind of like answer to what I had been sort of chasing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I asked this question because, like, I think there were moments of me also thinking a lot about, you know, what makes me want to step on stage, but not just looking at the mirror and feel comfortable about myself, right? So what actually makes you, what motivates me, right, deeply, right, inside of us, right, that, you know, that allows us to say, okay, we are not just looking at the mirror and just feel and take selfies, you know, or maybe post on Instagram, you know, you know, get some likes, right? But, you know, to do a step further, right, to really showcase the world, not just only you yourself, but, you know, with all of your history, you know, kind of exposed to the world, right? So what informs you that decision? I think that was always very interesting to me, right? For me, it's more like I see the world, I see the injustice of the world, and I was like, I'm angry, right? At the same time, so I don't think it's always just, okay, I'm very proud of myself and I want to showcase myself, right? I think a lot of times it also comes with, you know, for me, it's a lot about, you know, this, I won't use anger because I'm not literally angry, but there is this sense of like, okay, I want to showcase the world who I am, because the world has actually, the society actually had made us invisible, right? Or even demonized us in so many different ways, right? And so I need to come out and say, well, I exist, right? So you can't just deny my existence. So I think, you know, especially for trans non-binary athletes, I do think a lot of times we also have that, whatever you call it, anger, passion, you know, that fire that motivates us, not just to be comfortable and satisfied, you know, looking in front of a camera or mirror, but to really step outside of that and then, you know, to come on stage, right? So I think that is, you know, I think you just beautifully said, you know, what motivates you, you know, specifically. So that was really, really great.
No, thank you.
I was like, yeah, I think that was really, you know, that you know, today we bring you in because we really want to really hear more about your experiences, right? Whether it's like the physical change, the emotional challenges, and also the spiritual growth that you know, kind of touch on, especially like during this process of like contest prep, right? So I think a lot of people, you know, have no idea of how to prep a contest, right? Yeah, of course, a lot of them would hire a coach, but a lot of us also don't hire a coach, right? And we try to do it our own way, right? So I think it would be very valuable for us, you know, to hear some of your experiences, right? For your first prep for the IATBP, you know, more technical stuff like, you know, I know you started prepping, is it 1.5 years? And then, you know, how's your training? How's your nutrition, diet looks like during your prep?
Yeah, it was, oh my gosh. And again, like this feels like it was forever ago, but it wasn't. So I'm just like processing that right now. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, but it was brutal. That's the best way I can put it. It was hard. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, like mentally and physically. I will say though, the physical part of it was not as hard as the mental part of it. And that's because I like to eat a lot of food, and then I couldn't. And then I was very sad. like and like psychologically, like I just felt like I had no like my brain was just not firing. I could feel the difference, and I think that was really hard for me. But yeah, I was in the gym 7 days a week. Some of those days were just cardio days. That's actually not true. I was probably in the gym 6 days a week, one rest day. Um, but it was like 2 hours, 2.5 hour sessions, with cardio in there. Towards the end, like peak week and all that stuff, I was in the gym probably again like 2.5 hours, but it was all cardio. Um, I wasn't eating very much. My diet was down to probably, I don't know, like 1,000 calories. So it was tough, and for comparison, I think when my bulking phase was like 3,500 calories a day,
A
and
thousand calories is less than I eat,
it was
and
so
I'm
hard.
120 pounds. So
Yeah, and it was crazy. It was like the last few days, like going into competition, it was like I was not eating very much. And, I did hire a coach to help me with that. And I just followed the plan to a T. Like, I'm a Capricorn through and through, and I love a good plan, right? So, like, I was all about this, like, oh, do this thing, go to the gym, eat this thing, da da da. I also have a really bad sweet tooth. And, like, my wife had to literally hide the sweets in our house like 3 times because I would find them. I wouldn't like go looking, but I would go looking.
yeah.
And I'm like, I just need like a Twizzler or something. And she's like, you can't, like, you're gonna ruin it. So, but she was very supportive, and a lot of this, she allowed me to take the time I needed to be great at something new. And I think that's um, kind of off topic, but that's all I can really ask for in a partner. So, but yeah, it was hard. It was brutal. It was. I wouldn't say I lifted like the most poundage I've ever lifted, but I think the combination of dieting and obviously going from like bulking to cutting was just something totally new for me. And so I tried to take it in stride. I tried to learn and ask really good questions of my trainer, and like dive deeper into like the whys of this, and look at the finite details, but also like the big picture of like what's the end goal and like how do we get there. I love a plan, like I said. Like what are the steps in between, and if one of those steps is missing, like what is the impact on the end result. So understanding if I decide to take a leg day off, like what was the impact going to be? Turns out the impact was going to be I would be in the gym doing cardio for a very long time. So it it was hard, but it was in bite-sized pieces. It was perfect, and I had to really work hard to not be like I remember being. And I think Stephen, we talked about this, like being angry, but like not actually angry, but it was because my diet had me eating very little calories, and to not like project that out because it's not actually how I felt, but I felt like I had like been running on fumes and was just upset and whatever. Um, so that was a little bit unexpected and took some navigating, a lot of explaining and apologizing at the beginning, but we got through it. So
Yeah, I think those. I mean, you also what you just said also reminds me. Like when I was prepping, like what I did was I forced my partner to actually eat a lot
oh yeah,
because I can
yeah,
look at her eating,
yeah.
and that looking of her eating actually kind of satisfied me of not
Hmm.
being able to eat, and at least I can smell it. I can look at it,
Yeah,
I've
and then
never heard of that before, Sufam. What the hell? I've listened to a lot of like chats about people discussing their prep. I've never heard of that before.
another way I do it is that I start to like have like during prep I actually have a separate Instagram
uh,
account that only looks into all the food that I like. And I think that craving for weird food is
yeah.
actually very true too. Like you talk about the anger side, we'll talk about that more. But I think that craving for, like, for example, for myself, I never really had a craving for like sweet food or
Hmm.
fried food. So
Hmm.
sweet and fried foods always out of my reach. But during prep, I realized that the first year, I started to be I get addicted to French fries. Fries. And I like, never loved fries in my whole life.
Yeah.
Like starting, I just want fries. And then the next year, I just want hamburgers.
Mm-hmm.
And those are food that I actually would never actually eat during my bulk, during my off
Yeah.
season. But suddenly, during prep, I suddenly just have cravings for food I never had.
Yeah.
Right. So I have a separate Instagram account, just follow all the tags of these like wonderful food. And when I eat my like, broccoli and chicken breast, and then I would look into Instagram and then look into people like, doing all this like crazy stuff with the delicious food. And I
Yeah.
felt like I eat it. So, so I think that was something, somehow I kind of, some of the ways, right, that I cope with that food craving,
Yeah.
right? So for you, do you have like specific ways to help you, cope with the decrease in calories, not being able to eat the food that you love?
Yeah. I eventually just had to basically just decide that it was going into my body to nourish my body, and whatever I was going to eat was going to be enough, and that was it. There was no room for like negotiate. I was like trying to negotiate with myself, which I do not recommend. There's no room for negotiation, no room for debate. Like it just is what it is. You eat the thing, it nourishes you. You're not missing anything. The concept of lack in terms of what I was eating, I had to do away with, which took some intentionality because I felt it every day. So it's like, how do you undo something that you're feeling every day that ultimately, spiritually, is not actually fueling you? So it was hard. I mean, it definitely it changed my thoughts on several things and my perception of like food and consumption and all that stuff. But it was tough.
Yeah, I think I always about this concept of lack.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember one of the female bodybuilders that I look up to. While in one of her, I think in some of her like online posts, she talks a lot about like she was talking about the challenges of contest prep too.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing one thing she talked about that is very meaningful is that she said what we're experiencing, that hunger, that craving for food, is a first world problem.
Yeah.
Kind
Very
of
much
this
so.
thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like of course, because it's really like, this is our own choice, right? To starve ourselves, to crave for a better physique, where there are a lot of there are different parts of the world where people are just, literally starving and not having enough food. And we are complaining about the choices that we make, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think to that, it makes a lot of sense to me to kind of remind myself, right, why I am doing all this shit to myself, and that it is a privilege, right? I think it is very important to acknowledge that being able to step on stage, being able to compete, in a lot of ways, is actually a privilege, because a lot of people, like I have been coaching bodybuilders from, let's say, like from the Philippines, for instance, they just don't have a lot of access to a lot of stuff, right? So and thinking about we are able to, let's say, prep a competition, fly or drive to a location where we can compete, right? And there's a space for us to compete. I think these are very much our privileges. And I think once we have more privileges, we have more like responsibility. Yes. Right, and accountability too. So yeah, I think that is something that how I persuade myself, right, to continue that really difficult prep, right, to mentally. Yeah. So you also mentioned about the anger issue, right? I think for those who have not experienced a contest prep, like a lot of times, and this is different from what people usually say, the roid rage, right? Because a lot of times people mix it up, right? Because roid rage is more on, the use of steroids, and then a lot of times steroids might, especially testosterone, sudden increase amount of testosterone, for instance, and other, drugs might makes you, moody, irritated, right? But this is a different kind of like a challenge, right? Mentally, like emotionally too, because like it's mostly because when you have a decrease in your food calorie, right? So I think your brain starts to prioritize,
Yes.
what you can do, right? And then a lot of times we get also impatient because we're always craving for more food, right? We're always craving for, getting enough calories for our body.
Mhm.
So, anything else, could actually easily irritate us, right? It could be just the smell of some delicious bread or whatever, right? Or it could just be someone who is doing, your partner doing a small, tiny thing, that you don't always like, right? And it could suddenly become a huge
Oh,
thing, right? So I think that is also pretty common, right, among people who prep the competition, especially the first time, because a lot of us didn't expect that we would. We are the most gentle person out, normally, but then during prep, especially towards the end of the prep, right, we become irritated, we become impatient a lot of times, or we become angry. Like I
right.
would like a lot of times suddenly get angry with myself, like during training. And if people don't know about that, they thought I was like, I don't know, I was trying to be mean, but then
Sure.
I was actually just really, impatient about myself and thought,
Yeah.
oh, I should have done better, that kind of stuff, right? So, how do you, for you, like, what was your first reaction when you realized that, okay, suddenly I did something that I normally didn't did, right, emotionally, and how do you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I think for me, so that's a great question. For me, I kind of shocked myself. I was like, that's not me. I don't act like that. Like that's not normal. And I had to kind of walk it back and be like, okay, what are the contributing factors to this? Why do I feel this way? And I figured out it was diet, but ultimately it was like the accountability that comes with that. I couldn't put it on individual sports, right? I couldn't put it on anybody else. I couldn't look, to my environment. It rested on me. And I think it was just a self checkpoint. Like if this is not the person I want to be, if I don't want to act this way, change your behavior. And that's kind of just the way I was raised. It's like you're responsible for your own actions, and you should be leading with love at every interaction. If you're not, walk it back and figure out why that's not the case, like or why that is the case. And so it just took some serious accountability to understand like this. If this is not who I want to be, change it. And I think we all have that power. And of course, it's like a very distilled version of like how to self improvement. But I think ownership and accountability and understanding that that's not where you want to be, and then making the right changes to put yourself back to where you want to be. That's something I had to actually really focus on and be diligent about, because I didn't like who I was becoming, quite honestly. I didn't like being angry. I didn't like being upset. I didn't like being tired and lethargic and complaining all the time. So I took control of it, and it had to happen, because I don't think I would have finished even training and prep if I had known that.
Hmm. You know what? For me, it was like I think 1 year, maybe two or third year, towards my competition year.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's because I competed once every year, mostly
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have much resources to compete more than once.
Sure.
So I was like, I would just compete once a year. And I think when it comes into the second or third year, with my partner, she gave me an ultimatum. She was like, if you still behave like that, we're not going to work out. And I was like, I
Yeah.
was scared. I was like, oh my God, I need to like realize that I really need to do something with my behavior. And a lot of times, I try to explain to her, because like it's not really her fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for her, she would be really feel like it's her fault, right? Because
Right.
I would be angry at little things, and I don't even know why I would be angry
Yeah,
at those
that's
things,
the
right?
hard part. Like you don't know why, you're like just mad. Like,
Yeah, and
like
then it's like it's so quick a lot of times, right? And then you just realize afterwards, like, oh, it's actually nothing.
right.
I don't actually know what that is, right? And
Yeah.
so you're not aware. A lot of times you don't even know when the anger comes in, right?
Right.
And I think that ultimatum that she gave me actually made me kind of wakes me up and said, okay, I need to change that, or else I'm going to lose this person that's important in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gave a challenge to myself, like, can I not have those episodes at all?
Yeah.
Right? How can I actually, upgrade my emotional intelligence, right?
Right.
And now I would say I'm proud I take pride in not getting angry like 99% during my prep because I'm just too tired to get angry because when you get angry,
True.
you have to have energy and then it uses your calories, right?
Yeah.
So when I think of that, like I'm gonna save my calories. I'm not gonna use it to be angry. So my anger, and then I think meditation kind of helps me a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like it makes me realize when the anger comes, I realize it before it actually before it explodes.
Sure.
Right? Kind of stop it a little bit. Like it slows your anger down. And that helps me a lot for me to realize and be more conscious about my emotional, right? My emotions, like coming like in weird forms, right? Random, right? Random in weird ways. And so, yeah, and I think that was interesting, like, how we all deal with like those emotional challenges very differently.
Right.
So, yeah, and I think apart from food, apart from, the anger issue irritation that you might feel, do you experience other kinds of challenges like during the prep?
This is so minute, and I feel funny kind of even saying it, but I literally was doing so much cardio, I would have to bring an extra change of clothes to the gym because I was just completely wet. Like, and I kept sending pictures of my coach. I'm like, is this normal? Like, I literally have to change my shirt, I have to change everything. I think that the time, just overall, like the time it took to actually give bodybuilding my full attention and full commitment it was more than I expected. And that was a challenge on my relationship, and it was a challenge on other parts of my life. And, I wasn't super social. And I think, Sifu, you and I talked about this before, but like, I just scaled it almost all the way back. And I had to be in my like world of bodybuilding fully focused. And I don't know why I thought this, but I didn't fully expect that I would have to go that far. But again, like took it in stride and understood that like, this is what it requires. This is what is needed. And, but yeah, man, honestly for me, like food was the biggest thing. I just love to eat so much. I'm like, oh man, I can't do this. I can't have that. The first thing I did after winning was I got a huge burger and just like went to town, and it was perfect. But yeah, between the dieting was definitely hardest for me, and the time commitment and just understanding how to like sort of restructure my world to accommodate the time that it required to be good. It took some learning and adapting for sure.
So
I think that's
during,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Zifa.
no, you first.
I was just gonna say, I think that's a lifelong challenge for competitive bodybuilders. I mean, I don't know because I've never competed, but I love listening to interviews and stuff. So I've listened to lots of interviews, and I like, you hear bodybuilders who are lifelong competitors, right, competing into their 30s, 40s, 50s, talk about how for them the spiritual, emotional, and mental growth, part of that is learning how to not let a bodybuilding prep like completely derail your life, right? Because the first time you do it, they say it consumes everything, and it changes how you interact with people and all that. And then so by the time they're in their 40s, for them, the challenge is like, okay, I already know how to prep, right? Now, how do I bring an even better physique to the stage while still having time with my partner, while still having time with my kids, while still being able to go out to eat, and like see my friends, and like that is like for them just the most insane mental challenge that they can undergo, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, do you have anything to add, Dion?
I was just gonna say that makes complete sense, and that's like legit how I felt at the time.
Yeah.
And it's weird because maybe in your first year it just is this way, but you feel like you really have no other option. Like,
right. Yeah.
It's not that it's like black and white thinking, but it's like all in, or it's not going to be enough. And
right.
So that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really good point.
Well, yeah, it's because I think your first prep, it's like you don't have yet it's your first experience, right? So you do kind of have to go all in because you don't have all of the nuance, like knowledge, experience, skills, whatever, to be able to finesse it better. So you're kind of like, all right, like we just gotta fucking do this,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was actually, that actually relates to a question I was thinking before Nat gave us this really, really good overview of how a lot of bodybuilders treat their prep. Like, I was like, for your prep, this is the first prep, right?
Yes.
So do you have any idea of how the prep looks like during the process of the prepping, or you're like, okay, I'm giving my trust to my coach and I will just do whatever my coach tells me? And which way do you think is better? You know, having some sort of mental preparation, you know, getting an idea of how it might look like, or, you know, just do what's, you know, in front of you, you know, just make it at the present and then just follow instructions. So which way works better for you?
For me, it was understanding the end goal and then understanding the bits and pieces and steps that had to happen between the start and the finish. And I started that way, and then ultimately, like halfway through, I was like, you know what, just tell me what to do, and I'll do it, because I didn't have the capacity to like visualize this anymore or like see the long road. I had to do what was right in front of me, and that was like mental strain, physical strain, just like general state of the world. And I was like, I have to just focus, and I did it one day at a time, and I just put full faith in my coach and was like, tell me and I'll do it, like, period. It doesn't need to be harder than that, because I didn't really have much else to give other than that. So I put full faith in my coach. But I would say to like people, like, everyone's different. Do what makes you comfortable. If you need the full roadmap, if you need the full picture, or if you just want to do it in bite-sized pieces, like, do what you're comfortable with, and do what works for you. And it might take some trial and error to figure out what that looks like and what that means, but be willing to try some things and be willing to experiment a little bit to find what works for you. There's no perfect template. Like, what works for me may not work for Sifu and vice versa. So I always encourage folks to stick with what works for them and to be curious enough to explore what that could look like.
Yes, yes, that's very true. I think just different people have a different way of dealing with. Like for me, I like to see the whole picture. I need to know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
But and I also love to tell people who train with me to know what they're going to go through and have a mental preparation for that, right? And so, you know, you are well prepared for whatever things that might happen. But I also feel like, you know, being able to be at, you know, really in the moment, right? And just experience things, you know, and just let go of, like, you know, what it might happen, what it has to
Right.
be, what it hasn't should be. I think it's also a very different, you know, way of growth, right? When we talk about, like, you know, you mentioned very early on about, you know, the spiritual aspects, right, of growth, right, during this prep. Was it, you know, how was that spiritual growth looks like to you? And was it kind of expected to you? Or is it something, you know, kind of unexpected?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So when I was playing basketball, like back in the heyday, I just there. So my coach called me the Energizer Bunny because I never ran out of energy, but that was because I had a full understanding of like where my energy comes from and like where my ability comes from, and that is from a. I'm not going to get like too hippie woo on you, but it comes from a source that is it cannot be depleted. There's an abundance of everything that I need, energy wise, you know, psychologically, all of that stuff. It exists with whether or not I, you know, consume these calories or not. You know, there's a source that I pull from, that I draw from, that is just unlimited. And I had to like remind myself of that during this, because I felt like so much, understandably, so much energy and focus was being put on what I was consuming, what I was eating, poundage, you know, all of those things that are very calculated. And what I love about, you know, the spiritual nature of things is it's so fluid and unlimited and graceful and just abundant at all times. And so I channeled that and I tapped into that and was like, it doesn't really matter how much you eat, what you lift, what you don't lift. Just understand that everything that you need is going to come from the source, and you can rely on that. And put your faith in that, and remove the fixation of like how many calories. Not to say I didn't follow the plan, I did, but I had to like tap out of it almost and just go through the motions and be like, okay, this. Ultimately, I know that what I need is going to come from a source that is unlimited. I'm always going to be filled by that, more than I'm going to be filled, no offense to spinach or chicken or whatever. Like, I will be filled in ways that I need, and I can count on that.
So yeah, so it's more like, you know, what you attract, you become, right? Kind of that
Also
kind of
that, yeah,
idea,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So if you always think of like, okay, there's enough food, even though like, you know, bodily wise, you're not having enough calories, right? You know, maybe on a mental, emotional aspect, you can feel much better.
Yeah.
Or, you know, for you, I think you were just talking more about, you know, really letting go, you know, the idea of lack, right? So I'm lacking the food, I'm lacking, you know, the energy, but, you know, to really let go of that thought, right? You know, and then that gives you a more like kind of, you know, I don't know, comfort maybe, or even like growth, right?
Comfort, growth, stability. And so for me, the spiritual growth came and just like, again, understanding that the sources that I pull from are unlimited. They're more powerful than anything I'm ever going to eat. And I'm being cared for and looked after in a way that I know has my best interest in mind. So I'm going to do this plan on a human level. I'm going to do this plan, follow these steps, this, and this. But I know that ultimately, like, it's a mind over. The best way I can say is mind over matter, right? Like, which is weird in a bodybuilding context because so much of bodybuilding is like a physical representation. You know, you're eating foods and things like that. There's a lot of physicality that comes with bodybuilding, but there's a really sweet spot of like a spiritual nature that allows you to sort of like break free of what feels like restraint. Hold on a second. I'm like in this conference room. Break through the restraint that food and things can put on you. And I feel like that growth, I felt that inside me, and then I saw it day of competition. Because I remember showing up being like, I've already done the work. I'm already here. Like, I'm already full spiritually. I'm like, let the chips fall. Like, whatever. Let's just have fun with this thing and enjoy it. Because the work's already been done. And I'm already here to represent and demonstrate, you know, life and ability and spirit. And that feels good enough for me. So let's just enjoy it.
That's so interesting because how should I say that? For me, it's like it takes years, right? It takes years of competition to slowly realize that. And I'm so glad you realized it in only one competition. I think it's for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to, you know, make that transition, right? There's a lot of times when we think of sports, we think of bodybuilding in particular, we think of it as a very physical sport, right?
Yeah.
Well, we might kind of touch on this mind-body connection because we have to train the muscles, right? We have to connect our muscles with the mind so that we can, you know, connect it well, right? So it's the most that we talk about, you know, how the mind and the, you know, mind and the matter kind of connect with one another, right? And what you are telling us is actually there is another dimension of it, right? In terms of like, you know, preparing for competition, displacing a physique on stage and feeling at peace and even joy, right? On stage, right? Without really needing to worry about, okay, whether I'm doing this right or wrong or stuff like that. And it took me years to realize that. And I remember my last competition on stage, I was just happy to be there. And I was like, why are people on the backstage so angry, like so anxious, so nervous, right? And I was like, I'm just happy to be here, like, you know, and I often also, I often also visualize, right, how I'm going, before I'm going on stage, I visualize it thousands of times, you know, how I'm going to be stepping on the stage, how I'm going to walk, how I'm going to pose, right, how I'm going to smile and facing the judges and audience, you know, the bright lights usually, you know, shining on your face with the cameras, right? So how do you face that? And once I'm really on that stage, it's just, you know, one of those moments that your head actually have more mental space, and it almost feels like I can see myself. There's another self of me that I look back and look at myself on stage, right? That's the feeling that I felt, and it was there's an aspect of just happiness and joy. And it's not just like, okay, we are happy because we have people around us who support us. I think there is something more than that. And I feel like that aspect's like, you know, it's spiritual aspect of the sport itself and competing in the sport itself is often being underrated. Like, you know, there's not much discussion about that. You know, a lot of times bodybuilding or, you know, sports in general and competition in general are being relegated to, you know, to about winning or losing. And I think there's a lot more than that. And I think that I'm so glad that you actually bring that out today. And that's so important, you know, for people to think, right, about those aspects.
I feel like we saw it too. Like I remember after the competition was over, Bucky, the executive director, and I were talking, and we were like, "Dude, Dion's smile on stage was like fucking crazy." Like we like you could just like see how happy he was to just be there, and that really like got to us. So I feel like the fact that you were able to get there, like it was so visible to everybody who saw you on stage, just how happy you were just to be there, just to have that experience and get to share that with people. And that like touches everybody, you know. So I just wanted to let you know that observation. I mean, it was
Yeah.
real, you know. It's not just an internal thing. Like it radiates out of you once you actually are able to overcome that mental like blockage and just be present there and just enjoy the experience.
That means so much because this is crazy. Not even that this is like a full circle moment, but it's like that is why I was raised like lead with love. That is why, you know, when things go south, you look for the givers. That's why like being the kind person in the room and doing the right thing matters so much, because it impacts everyone who's around you. And it's tangible, right? And that's something that people pick up on. And ultimately, you're helping make other people feel more comfortable and feel better as well. And I think that if we're not doing that out in today's world, you know, what are we doing? So that means a lot to me. Honestly, like kind of emotional, but like that means a lot, because that was the whole intent. It was to contribute to the space instead of retract from it, to not necessarily take attention, but to give joy and to give acceptance and all of that. So thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I have to add that too. Like I was one of the judges, and
Oh,
of course,
yeah.
we don't judge you based on your vibration.
Right, yeah.
Maybe we need to add that in our judging criteria.
Yeah.
You know, how
Your
much you vibe.
energy.
You know, 1 to 10. You know.
I would love to judge that category. That'd be great.
Yes, but I think, you know, what was so remarkable about your performance on that day of stage, when you were on stage, was like you fill up the space, right? And then you know, that was, to me, is a very humbling kind of feeling after the space, because there are a lot of people who, you know, that are very like, you know, passionate and showing off their body, but
Yeah.
there is still something that is missing within them, right? So I see a lot of athletes, you know, in that, especially I think bodybuilding athletes, because a lot of times we are motivated by our sense of lack, right? We are always feeling not enough. We are not perfect enough. We want more. We want to be more perfect. That's why that drives our motivation, that drives us, right, to actually really to be better. But I think what I saw in you, at least on the day you performed, was really, you know, there's already a sense of, you know, I don't know if wholeness or completeness is a good word, right? But there's a sense of like, you know, not lacking right there. And you are just filling up the space with a very humbling kind of, you know, vibe. So I think that was really important. I think, you know, that comes from really, you know, your growth, right? Through the prep itself, through, you know, changing your physique and challenging yourself mentally, emotionally, and then being able to reach that stage where you radiate, basically, right? And you radiate, and you know that radiation, well, because you also have a really good physique, right? That all combines together, right? It becomes one of the best physique that we actually saw, right, throughout our competition. And so I think that, you know, that is something that, you know, that was really valuable, right, from you, and being able to hear from your experience. So especially with like, you know, all these anti-trans things happening, right? The political environment that we are in right now,
Yeah.
right, is also very devastating. And so for you, you know, so you have this experience with IATBP. So what do you think is the significance and the role of, you know, IATBP to you, you know, given your experience in competing with us?
That's such a good question. It has been, how do I want to phrase this? Okay, it has been the instrument or the catalyst to my freedom and self-acceptance, because it provided the environment, exactly what I was looking for. It provided a space for me to contribute to a group of folks that I respected tremendously. We've all done the work, you know, we are in their peak week, all the crazy stuff, right? But to be a part of that environment and to be a contributor to that environment, and just to create a safe space. Like we talk about safe space, I think now in a different context maybe we did even a year ago. And the critical nature of that, I think, is you can't put a number on it, right? But the organization has literally taken me from, I was a very shy kid, and I was like in high school, growing up, whatever, was shy, didn't really talk a lot. But the feeling that I felt going into the competition was not one of like anxiety and stress. It was of acceptance and belonging. And I like felt that in my soul. And so the significance is that there's a huge opportunity, dare I say, critical need for the organization now, right? Because it provides that type of space and opportunity for folks. I think of like younger trans people a lot, and folks who are, you know, getting into sports or like fitness or like bodybuilding, whatever the case may be, to see this organization offering what it does in terms of acceptance, accessibility, freedom, and expression. I think if I saw that as a kid, my childhood would have been very different. And I think that it's a vehicle for a lot of folks to get some safe space and the comfort that they need, and really raise the profile of the community in a way that I think is understated. You know, I don't think trans bodybuilders are not the top of conversation. You know, it's this is like the best side of what, you know, a lot of folks are calling, you know, the negative trans experience, and it's just inspiring. But I think that the opportunity to inspire young folks and even older folks and people in the trans community to just be part of what they're doing, to raise the profile of the trans community, to raise the profile of, you know, fitness and bodybuilding, and to capture this niche, I think is tremendous. And I love the organization deeply. I think that the work is far from done, but that's a good thing because there's so much opportunity and so much potential.
I don't have anything to say. I'm just touched. Like, I'm just.
Well, I was waiting for you, Ned, to ask our final question. So do you want to ask it, or do you want me to do it? I love your final question, as always.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what you like what you mean by the final question, but like because we had a couple kind of skipped around a little bit. But I guess my last question that I would want to ask was, like, going back to your contest prep and competition days, like, what do you wish that you would have known before you actually started the prep, or like before you walked in on competition day, that you think would have like helped like you through that experience that maybe others might benefit from?
Yeah, I would say, however hard you think it's going to be, like, okay, let me just rephrase. You've gotten through your hardest days. You've gotten through your hardest days, right? You've gotten through that. There's a way to get through this hard stuff too, but you have to understand that it's going to be probably one of the hardest things you've ever done in a way that you may not anticipate, whether that be the physical challenge of actually getting there and lifting 6-7 days a week, or just the time commitment or the dieting. There's going to be something that is harder than you expect, but don't quit. Take a break, refocus, figure out what your like support system and stability system looks like. Lean into those things and stay on track, because the second you fall off, it's really hard to get back on. But anticipate it being difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? Like, it's not easy, but it is possible. So stick to that and know that you can absolutely do it when you have the right support, the right environment, and the right headspace.
Thank you. I feel like that's true. Yeah, I was gonna say that was really well said.
Thank you.
But yeah, I don't have any other questions. I mean, Sufeng, do you have anything else you want to ask before we close out, or?
No, I think you know, we have a really great conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, yeah, you know, bringing up that, you know, mental challenges and specifics about contest prep is something that, you know, a lot of times, even like in mainstream bodybuilding, they don't really talk a lot about, right? We always want to showcase the best part, you know, of everything, especially bodybuilders. We only want to show the best physique, you know, the best angle that we have, right? But I think, you know, those sometimes setbacks, those challenges are also part of that experience, right? And part of that experience that make all of us grow. And, you know, and we can also see that kind, you know, when you really grow, you can actually, you know, your vibe actually just changes, and people would notice that. And I think, you know, bodybuilding, at least for me, it is such a, you know, that is such a, you know, it's a wholesome experience. You know, if you really get into, you know, the deeper side of it, right, without just thinking about winning and losing, and then, you know, just care too much about winning or losing, right? And I think, that is the beauty of doing, maybe individual sports, to a certain extent.
Right.
Because a lot of times when you do team sports, for me, you have to worry a lot about other people too. And your performance is not just your performance, right? It's a team performance and team experience, right? So I think getting to that collectivity, first of all, each individual have to be able to get to that, that level, right? In order for collectively, everyone can also elevate that experience of like prepping or competing. And I think that was much harder to do. But individually, we can all do something with ourselves, right? And, whether it's really going into just dieting, just training, just lifting, or really, step on a third step further and do competing, right? So I think that would be, a really life-changing experience, even though you have no expectation or
Right.
even though you have no prior experience, right, in bodybuilding. So, and so, I mean, that reverts back to, advertisement time. That's what I love to do.
Shameless plug.
I can
Here
really
we
tell
go.
people, okay, that's the advertisement time. Like, so come compete with us, right? And also whether you want to compete, whether be a member, whether you be a spectator and come and, to witness those, bodybuilders on stage, right? That, just, sacrifice a lot, right? Mentally, physically, to, get to a physique that they can express and showcase themselves, support us. You can support us through our membership system, support us through, joining to compete, support us through, watching, our athletes compete. I think those are really, really important for us. And, that will be huge support for us, in a lot of ways, like mental support, of course, so that we know that, this work that we have been doing, worth to continue. Right. And worth for people to, worth to influence more people.
Yeah.
And also, like, of course, your support will help to sustain our, future competitions, which we really very, very much hope that we can continue that. We're going to have 10th anniversary, 20th anniversary, maybe 30th anniversary in the future. So I think those, so we need your support and, in whatever ways. So, mental support, financial support, everything would be very valuable, and we will be very grateful about that. Yes, so advertisement time done.
Yes, thank you, Sufung, for the excellent shameless plug. They're very good at that, doing that, like good. Just seamlessly. Yeah. But yeah, definitely, like we rely on your support, and clearly these conversations that we're having with athletes like Dion, part of why we're doing that is to demonstrate the impact that these competitions have on other trans athletes, so that people see the significance of it, and hopefully want to continue to support that, so that we can have it for years to come, because it is so important. So definitely, yeah, if you want to become a member, go on our Instagram page, and there's a post pinned right at the top that shows you how to become a member. And if you want to compete with us, do the same thing, become a member, and then log in and register to compete with us on November 18th this year in Atlanta, Georgia. But yeah, thank you, Dion, so much for your time. I know we went, I think we just hit the mark of 75 minutes, so I think we're right on the money. But thank you for just like taking the time to sit down with us and really just getting very authentic about like your whole experience, the ups and downs of what prep and competition was like for you. I was watching the comments while we talked, and a lot of people were saying like how inspired they were hearing your story. So yeah. I know that has an impact, just you sharing authentically. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And you should definitely follow Dion on Instagram, by the way, because I hear there's a potential NPC competition in the future, is what you said. So we would love to see where that goes and watch you, take some more wins.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the goal. So I'll keep y'all posted. Nothing on the calendar yet, but yeah, that's the next thing, NPC.
Awesome. So well, I wish you luck with that for sure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was such it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And, the universe unite all of us here today. And then it's a great pleasure to be here. For all our audiences, thank you so much for staying. Thank you so much for participating and listening to the story. And we hope to see you soon. Our next fireside chat will be on next week.
27th. Yeah.
Yes, so it would
Thursday the
be next week.
27th at 7 p.m.
Yes.
Eastern time. So, and that's going to be with another winner, with Leo, who was the winner of the heavyweight division in the Masc II bodybuilding competition. Nice. So we're also very excited about getting to talk to him.
Yeah, so stay tuned on our official Instagram page. Follow Dion, follow me, and follow IATBP. Okay? So thank you so much for everyone. Have a good afternoon for you and good night for me.
Good the rest of your night. It's like 1:15 in the morning over there.
Yes, I'm gonna falling asleep now. But thank you so much and have a good day.
All right.
Everyone.
Thanks everybody.
You. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.